Hello, my name is Father Maximilian Buonocore. I'm a monk at the Benedictine Abbey in Newark, New Jersey. In addition to my priestly responsibilities here, I work at St. Benedict's Prep School. I run the Learning Center where I teach mathematics and I tutor a variety of courses. I'm also a licensed professional counselor. I have been involved in a lot of different jobs here, including infirmary and kitchen work. But I want to talk to you a little bit about how my vocation came about. According to my mother, my vocation started when I was in the womb. She often told me that when she was carrying me, that she had this premonition that I was going to be a very religious person. And as it turned out, she was right. And that's why she gave me the first name Peter and the second name Paul, after the two principal apostles. And when I was growing up, I just loved everything religious. I loved going to church. I loved praying. I loved praying the rosary. I loved going on pilgrimages with my mother to various shrines. And I would set up little shrines in our home. And I loved my silent time being out in the wooded area and just contemplating. And but what was really special for me was when I was old enough to be able to serve at Mass, and I would walk the mile every day from our house to the church to serve at the 7 a.m. Mass. And even during the years when I had to work delivering newspapers, so I would get up 4 o'clock in the morning, deliver newspapers on a route that was about 100 customers, and then I would walk the mile to church and serve at Mass. And if anyone ever asked me as I was growing up, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say, well, a priest or a religious brother. And that continued until I reached high school age. And when I got to high school, I was showing a lot of promise in math and science. And my teachers and even my father were encouraging me, saying, oh, you could be a doctor, you could be an engineer, etc. So then I moved in that direction. And I went to college. I was the first in my family to go to college. And I got my degree in biomedical engineering with high concentration electronics. And I worked as an electronics engineer for the Navy for many years. But there were certain things that continued to, I continued to ponder in my mind. And there were three things especially which I'd like to talk about, three important experiences in my early life that had such an important influence on me. The first one was when I was 7 years old, 1964-65, there was the big New York World's Fair in Flushing, New York. And my aunt had an apartment in Flushing, right near Flushing Meadow Park, where the fair was taking place. My family went down there to spend a week so we could go every day to the fair. And when I got there, no sooner did we get there, and I started becoming sick. I was so sick. I developed a very painful stiff neck, swollen glands, and headache, and a malaise came over me, and I didn't want to go to the fair, but I didn't want to spoil it for my family, so I would go to the fair every day. But I would have so much pain that sometimes I would start crying. Finally, after a couple of days, we got to enter the Vatican exhibit, which I was very excited about, as you can imagine. And I got especially excited when we arrived at the exhibit of the Pietà, Michelangelo's Pietà. And I stood in front of that, mesmerized. And I felt like I was there with Mary, suffering and suffering with being sorrowful for the death of Jesus. And I was so mesmerized that I just lost track of everything around me. And my parents said that they were trying to move me along because people were waiting to see the exhibit. And so finally, when they did finally get me to move, I realized that I didn't have any more pain. All the pain in my neck, my head, the malaise had all disappeared. And my father noticed that I had a real profound experience. And from that moment, he started calling me Pietà instead of Peter for the rest of his life. He never again called me Peter. He always called me Pietà. And he even made up a rhyme. And he would say, sometimes when he was frustrated with me, or sometimes just to make me laugh, he would say, Pietà, don't you ever forget ta, I'll get you yeta. And that would always make me laugh. But I realized over the years that every time he called me Pietà, that was like the Lord himself calling me by the name by which he was revealing to my deepest identity. And as I got older, I began to realize that just like Christ as God, his deepest identity is to be Pietà, to be love, to be compassion. That's what was my deepest identity in Jesus, to be Pietà, to be compassion for other people. And that thought just continued in my mind. And I never forgot that. And then another experience that was so pivotal was maybe it was around the same time. I can't remember exactly how old I was, 7 or 8 years old. At the main mass every Sunday, the church would be packed. And if you didn't get there early enough, you would have to stand in the vestibule. My father would get us up and say, come on, get ready. We have to get to church in time so we can get a seat. Well, one Sunday morning, I was just not getting ready. And my father said, why are you dilly-dallying? Why aren't you getting ready? And I said, well, Dad, I don't think I want to go to church. He says, why? Why don't you want to go to church? I said, well, Daddy, I think I don't believe in God anymore. So he stared at me. And as he stared at me, I started to tremble. And all of a sudden he said, oh, that's okay. God believes in you. Now start getting ready and let's go. Well, what a powerful experience that was. Now, my father said that kind of like off the cuff to get me moving. I doubt that there was a lot of profound thought there, but it really was something very profound that God, what is really important in my faith is that it's first God's faith, God's faithful mercy, and God who believed me into existence. He created me by believing me into existence. My very life is a witness to God's faithful mercy. So that my vocation in life is to be a witness to that faithful mercy of God and to reflect that to other people through pietà, through piety, through mercy, compassion. But another thing that influenced my vocation was my glow-in-the-dark crucifix. At an early age, my father gave my brothers and I crucifixes, which glowed in the dark. And I used to love looking at that crucifix at night. I would let it sit under the lamp, and then it would glow all night. And I would reflect on the meaning of that. I was saying, that's the light of Christ reflecting on me. I wanted to become like that glow-in-the-dark crucifix. And I began to see, just like the crucifix, the glow-in-the-dark crucifix, is powered and energized by a source of light beyond itself. I I become energized, enlightened in my spirit, in my heart, through the divine light when I pray, and especially when I partake of the Holy Eucharist. And then am energized by that light, then I can reflect that light, just like the crucifix reflects the light. I become phosphorescent with divine light, with divine grace. And that thought really was a powerful thought in the back of my mind. And so there's three important missions: being Pietà, being a phosphorescent crucifix, reflecting the light of God into the world, and being a witness to God's loving mercy. So finally, I went to a spiritual director and went through the spiritual exercise of St. Ignatius, and I finally came to the conclusion, yes, I have a call to religious life. And I ended up first joining a contemplative monastery, and I was at the Abbey of the Genesee for 5 years, but then the desire for more apostolic work kind of prevailed, and I ended up transferring to Newark Abbey, and I've been here since 1994, and I believe that my vocation is constantly being renewed, and it takes directions that I never really expect. And I look forward to more years as a monk at the Benedictine Abbey of Newark. God bless. If you're discerning a vocation, you want to look at a couple of things. First of all, are you attracted to the things that the people do in that vocation? So, for example, like if you're discerning a vocation to, like, say, monastic life, well, you really have to have a love for liturgy and prayer, chanting the Psalms, and because they do that a lot. Well, we do it, several times a day, and we spend, like 3 hours at least a day in church. So if you're attracted to it, the other thing is that sometimes discernment requires that you actually start engaging, and that's what I learned from the spiritual exercises of St. Ignatius, that when you engage in that way of life, do you have an extreme amount of anxiety, or you feel a certain sense of peace? Not that notice I say an extreme amount of anxiety, because when you're adjusting to a new way of life, you're always going to have some anxiety. But if you have too much, then it might be a sign, well, maybe that's not for you, maybe there's something else. But the most important thing, as what we read in the Rule of St. Benedict, does he or she truly seek God? Do I truly seek God? And that's what you do in any vocation, seeking God. And if you engage in that vocation, and that allows you to seek God in a way that suits your personality, like the monastic life for me, it kind of suits my personality. It doesn't go against the grain in any significant way, So I would say those are the things you have to look at. I was over 30 years old when I finally gave up my career and entered the monastery. And I was even older when I was ordained to the priesthood. But as the Lord kept saying to me again and again through the words of my father, Pietà, don't you ever forget, I'll get you yeta. Well, he got me yeta.